It's absolutely important. Without a prime rabbit, you're not going to win a major show like that. There's just not any way around it. You can have the perfect body on your rabbit, perfect type, but if you do not have a condition of flesh and an absolute top-notch prime fur, you're not going to win the big award. That's just the way it is. It's being able to put the finishing touches on the ideal rabbit for your particular breed is absolutely necessary if you're going to achieve that goal.
So what are the 10 factors to consider when conditioning rabbits for show?
Well, the 10 factors that I look at is genetics to start it out, then time of year, our seasons, spring, summer, fall, winter. And then we look at the age of rabbits. When do they come in? When does your genetic line come into coat best? What do they look at it like as juniors? And then what do they look at like as 6/8 and seniors and even beyond to give me an idea of longevity when we talk about longevity of coats. Age, daylight, artificial light versus natural light, temperature and humidity, nutrition, health, the reproductive status of the animals, environment, and then management. So to me, those would be the key factors that contribute to the success of having a really highly conditioned animal.
And that's what I think is so neat about how you're laying out the 10 different key factors to getting a rabbit prime, because I think the simple thing that everybody thinks about is feed, and what's the secret feed ingredient that I got to feed my rabbit, or the supplement to get them to be prime and be, you know, the best in show winner or the best it can be. And you know, that's what I'm excited about going through each of these 10 factors, is that it's so much more than just feed. There's so much to it.
I'm Dave Mangione and live in Circleville, Ohio. And I've been around livestock all my life. Grew up on a farm. In fact, went to college in animal science and was on a livestock judging team in college, and went on to grad school where I coached 3 university livestock judging teams, as well as my graduate work in animal nutrition. And from there, I went with Ohio State University, where I was in the Department of Extension with the university on faculty for 33 years, and had rabbits since I was 10 years old. I won't tell anyone my age now.
Yeah, you've definitely been doing it for a really long time, and I know that even back when I was a youth, that you know, you were one of the people that you know, I always looked up to as somebody that always had really nicely conditioned animals, and it seemed like every time you showed they were only ever prime. So that's why I'm excited about doing this topic and getting to learn from you and share different things that you have had experience with,
Sure.
you know, with your expertise. So
Okay.
And during that time, you have also won Best of Breed with at New Zealand Nationals.
Yes,
men's class winners.
have Best of Breed, I think 3 different times, and I've won Best Opposite Sex of Breed a couple different times. And I've been fortunate to be in the hunt, which you never know how that's going to materialize. And as you mentioned, I've been a runner-up to the Best of Breed for a couple of years now, but that's okay. That's all right.
I wasn't going to bring that up, but you'd rather be in the hunt of it, right? I get that.
Yeah. You can't get there unless you're in the hunt. So, you know, being able to have those opportunities, and I've been fortunate to have some of those wins, and you know, it's a great thing. You just appreciate it because it doesn't come along all the time. There's a lot of things, a lot of the stars have to align to make that happen, and I've been fortunate enough to be in that position.
Yeah. Well, and that leads right into the first question that I wanted to hit on, was how important is it of having rabbits that are prime when you're showing at really big competitive shows?
Yeah, it's absolutely important. Without a prime rabbit, you're not going to win a major show like that. There's just not any way around it. You can have the perfect body on your rabbit, perfect type, but if you do not have condition of flesh and an absolute top-notch prime fur, you're not going to win uh, the big award. That's just the way it is. It's being able to put the finishing touches on the ideal rabbit for your particular breed is absolutely necessary if you're going to achieve that goal.
What are all those things when we're thinking about having a rabbit be prime? What are we looking for?
It always starts with genetics. So you've got to have a foundation that has those genetics that allows you the opportunity to go ahead and be able to prime that animal. Genetics are the foundation. So you have type, and you've got muscle, and you've got fur, and fur is really critical. I learned from Robert Crawford, who, in my opinion, is probably the best New Zealand breeder of all time. He won numerous shows time and time again, and he talked to several of us about the importance of fur and animals that primed easily, that held their prime for a longer period of time than the average animal. And it was all about your genetic line and your breeding program, utilizing bucks that had beautiful coats right through their senior age. After a year of age, they would hold coats or have prime fur just like they were 6 to 7 months old. And those are the kind of animals that you wanted to use in a breeding program, especially if you were line breeding and developing your herd, your genetic line. You didn't want to breed to bucks or does that just didn't have a quality coat because it carries on, and you can't fix poor coats if you do not have the predisposition for genetics and quality of fur and the ability to prime. There isn't anything that you can do to get you there. So it starts with genetics. You've got to have it in your genetic line.
Yeah, which makes sense. And that's where I know you had said that we're going to end up hitting on 10 different factors going through that
That's
are the importance of being able to have rabbits that are prime. And I think starting with that one of genetics is definitely huge because, like you said, if you either have it or you don't, and that's what you're starting your base from.
Yeah.
Is it good to open up the questions I had on genetics then, or?
Sure.
Okay.
Let's do.
Yeah. So, and that was one of the questions was how much of a factor is genetics to getting a rabbit in prime?
Yeah, you want to select rabbits when you're starting your herd, when you're trying to put together a herd and trying to put your genetic line together. You look at body and you look at type, but then you've got to have a quality of coat. And it's a fur contest, but it's not a fur contest. It's not a fur contest from the standpoint that these furs are going to be utilized in clothing or coats or something like that. So you have to have the type of fur that has the ability to finish easy for the region of the country that you live in. Robert Crawford lived in South Carolina, and it's hot, humid. He developed a line of rabbits that had a short coat, a coat that was not super dense, and it was easy to finish. Those animals adapted to that region of the country. So you want to find that kind of short coat, not a long haired coat, not long guard hairs. The shorter and less density is going to be easier to finish. And that all comes back again to genetics if you've bred that into your herd.
And that was the next question I had was so how to select stock, but you already covered it. When someone is choosing the genetics for their next generation in their barn, what do you look for?
Uh, what I look for in my herd, and I raise New Zealand's. I also have Californians, and that's kind of a new venture in the last 5 years or so. But New Zealand's is the mainstay breed that I've been involved with, and so I really look for that quality of coat when those rabbits are weanlings, when they're 6 to 8 weeks old. I look to see that they have short type fur, fur that finishes quickly at that stage of the game. By 10 weeks of age, they've got a really prime kind of coat, and they carry those characteristics that tells me that those animals have the ability to put on a prime coat and a real quality coat, one that's attractive because of its short guard hairs, one that will go ahead and have a good touch to it, a texture when you put your hand on it. And so it starts at a young age, and then you look for longevity of coats as that rabbit matures and develops and gets some age on it.
So time of year and season, go ahead and what, how does that factor play in?
Yeah, let's talk about that. We talk about the season, spring of the year. Spring of the year is the easiest time of year to go ahead and condition rabbits. Because it's the time of the year that animals will, and in this case, rabbits, naturally bloom. We've got increased day length, increased light, moderate temperatures, hormone levels in the does and the bucks are increasing, estrogen in does, testosterone in bucks, and those hormones are important to go ahead and bring about prime in a rabbit. And so the spring of the year is a natural time for rabbits to go ahead and look their best. That's why we have our national shows in the spring, because our rabbits naturally bloom out in that time of the year. In fact, conditioning in the spring is a lot easier because all those variables, all those stars start to align a lot easier to get those animals in condition. As we move into summer and heat begins to increase, humidity begins to increase, becomes a little bit tougher to hold on to prime or keep prime very long on a rabbit. It's shorter lived or more difficult to achieve because we have hot outside temperatures. Our feeds generate heat, internal body heat in a rabbit just through the digestive process. So you add the heat from digestion on top of hot days and high humidity, prime becomes more difficult to achieve and also to hold on to. We start moving into fall. Our days are getting shorter. So the amount of light that our rabbits are receiving is starting to decrease. The temperatures are getting cooler, but they're probably more variable as we leave summer and go into fall. Ups and downs, major extremes, more difficult. You can't control the climate, and you can control other factors such as feeding and so forth. We'll talk about that in more detail. But the fall of the year is starting to move towards dormancy because now you also have a decreasing of hormone levels in your middle-aged and aged rabbits, and those would be your 6/8 and seniors. Your young rabbits are like they're teenagers. They're still really fired up, and they've got an natural increase in their hormones because of their youthful age. But our 6/8 and seniors in the New Zealand's, as we move into the fall, are starting to decrease. And we'll talk a little bit more about what we could do to fool maybe some of these animals and help to maintain some condition and prime on them. And then, we get to the winter, extreme cold temperatures, temperatures below 50 degrees, and we've got hardly any daylight, less than 10 hours daylight, short days. All of those factors lead towards the natural dormancy of the rabbit. And so then we really have a challenge to get prime during that time of the year. And if we do achieve it, it's not going to be held very long. It's going to be short lived. So those are the four seasons that we look at. And I look at the spring of the year for my breeding program because I breed rabbits for the spring nationals, and my other major breeding is for the convention in fall. And we'll get into that again a little bit more with regard to what age rabbits work best for those given times of year, and how condition and prime is a little different.
Go ahead. Let's go right into that. You hit everything I could. You hit everything that is possible on the time of the year. I think that was very interesting.
Okay. Age. So we come into age then. We've got, for me, when I show in the spring nationals, my major groups that I show are true 6/8 and seniors. They are prime in the spring. They are just at the top of their game, so to speak. They're 12 o'clock. It's easy to condition them. And I don't waste cage space for juniors for the spring shows, because the true 6/8 and seniors at a national New Zealand show, a junior's not going to win. It hasn't happened. I mean, in this day and age, our true 6/8 and seniors have just got so much more body to them and maturity that a junior is too young to compete at that stage of the game during that show. However, in the fall, when we look at age, true juniors do the best in the fall because they come in the coat easier. And the bigger juniors can move up into the 6/8 classes and compete because they prime, they handle well, firmness of flesh is there with that age group of animal. Their fur is in excellent condition again. They are just youthful enough that they prime better for a fall convention. It's rarely that you see a true 6/8 or senior do real well at a fall convention New Zealand show. This year, we had a senior doe from Gary Lewis that won best of breed and was, absolutely beautiful. That's not the norm. It's really difficult to get that age group of rabbit in the kind of condition and prime that it needs to be to win a fall convention. But juniors, I wrote an article one time, the juniors rule, and it was directed towards the fall convention. And I really believe that. And I think statistically, if someone looked at the placings and looked at, found out the information on the rabbits that won in most of those fall conventions, they were true juniors. They might have won a 6/8 class, but they were still a junior age animal.
Well, I have read that article. It was a very interesting article. We will include it in the link in the video.
Okay.
And it is one of those things that is really interesting, though. I mean, how you're planning your breedings, right, differently for the spring national or the convention based on when you feel your line's going to do the best and what you feel like you need to do the best within your breed. And like you said, that's where the breed typically is at too, of the best of breed winners coming out of those classes, which is different depending on the show.
Yes, very much so. And I gear my breedings that way there because it gives me more marbles to play with. I have a barn full of junior age rabbits, so that's typically looking at about 80 to 100 juniors. Now, then there's a mix between that, between does and bucks. We'll make it easy and say half of them are does and half of them are bucks. And even with the best breeding program, you're still going to have variation within that population. And they're not all going to prime just exactly the same time and so forth. So having some numbers to sort through and work with provides me with the opportunity to end up with a show string that is going to be pretty uniform and pretty consistent in terms of kind and quality.
When you have that like 100 to look through, how many do you end up taking out on the show team
then? My goal is to take 24 to 30.
Okay.
And I could have more than that, but that's my goal.
Yeah.
You'd like to have more. In some places, when we deal with temperature and humidity, we'll talk about that in a little bit. With our temperatures here in the region of the country that I live, which is usually hot, humid summers. And as we move out of summer, we've got real extremes and it can get 85 to 90 degrees in the day, and then all of a sudden plummet down to 40 or 32 degrees in the evening. That's not good. It'd be better off to stay warm, consistent, without extreme shifts more than 15 to 20 degrees from daytime to evening, than for those major shifts to occur. So, because of that, it makes it difficult to really get an entire group of rabbits. Well, if I have those 100 rabbits available and prepared for the spring, I'm looking at a really large group of prime animals to pick out of. And then I'm just getting super strict on who's going to actually go to the show.
Yeah, and seeing your show teams, I mean, at numerous national shows, I mean, that's one of the things that stands out. That's the reason why I wanted you to do this talk was, I mean, your animals, you walk by the cage and go, yeah, Dave's got another one that's awesome. Wow, not just one, his entire show string is amazing. So, I mean, it speaks to your work as a breeder and manager within your rabbitry. A couple questions I have with age. When do you start showing a rabbit, or when do you start a rabbit show career?
The show career for the youngest that I show them was at 5 months of age. I prefer to show, I gear to have my juniors in the fall at 5.5 to 5 3/4 months of age. At 6 months of age, they tend to get to the point where they're going to blow that coat, because the coats in the fall are short lived. They don't carry on to the 6-8 stage. Very few of them do. So I know they're going to break at that point. So I try to have their age at 5.5 to 5 3/4. And then those bigger, a little faster growing rabbits are going to go ahead and be able to show in the 6-8 class, because they'll have they'll have enough weight to compete. They certainly don't have maturity yet, but they're basically competing with another group of rabbits that's in the same situation as the ones that I'm putting in there.
And so you're bringing them out, like, is their first show the national, or do you bring them out to a show before that?
That's usually their first show. Yeah, I don't. I rarely will take any animals, if at all, to any other show prior to the convention. And the same way with the nationals. This spring, I'm not going to the nationals in Texas, and so those rabbits have all found new homes, except for the ones that I'm going to put in the breeding program. But when I am going to the national show, they don't see a show until the nationals. About every single one of them, except for a few that I may have showed at the convention in the fall, have never seen the show table until they get to the national.
Why is that?
Well, I gear and try to get them to their best at that show. That's my goal. Is when when I go to the national show, they are at 12 o'clock. They are at their ultimate prime at that show. I don't care about any other show prior to or after. I want them to be their best at that particular time. And that's how I gear my conditioning program for those rabbits. Is I lead up to that event. And at that event, that's where I want them their best.
It totally makes sense. The reason why I ask is that there are people that, I mean, you're only focused on those two big shows, and I do know you show at other shows too, but you're focused on those two big ones.
And I want to step back a bit. When I started, I showed at a lot of local shows, and I don't see anything wrong with that at all. I think they're great, and we have those shows, and I think that's a great thing for our young people and individuals getting involved with rabbits. And I did that for a long while, and then I went to my first national show, and I saw the rabbits there, and I felt like if I was going to go ahead and really get to the level that I wanted to be, I needed to go ahead and show at the national show level and convention, where the kind of competition was there that was necessary if I was going to go ahead and achieve my goal of having a top herd, what I considered a top herd. So That's what I did. And I learned from a lot of people. I learned a lot today. I didn't tell my age earlier, but I'm 69 years old and I'm still learning today. And I hope I never stop learning, because I always want to pick up pieces here and there that help me with the breeding program that I have, and to enhance it. And when we talk about conditioning, it certainly helps. It's a lot easier to condition a group of rabbits that's geared for one particular event than it is to go ahead and try to have 4, 5, 6, 8 different breedings, and then try to go ahead and and condition all those animals. That's pretty difficult. So I try to keep it simple.
Yeah, that totally resonates and makes a lot of sense. I mean, there's a reason why top breeders do well at those national events all the time, and one of those is keeping it simple and having the plan and sticking to it of knowing what you're shooting for. So makes
Right.
sense. Um, and just with that, starting the career and ending the career, I mean, are you doing anything on those rabbits then? I mean, I know you're selling out of the national show, but like, when do you decide to end the show career of a rabbit?
Actually, most of my rabbits, once they go to one of those events, that's pretty much in the spring. That'll be their first show and last show. Many of the does that I put in there that come back home are bred, and they go into the breeding herd and they never see the show table again. I have bucks that have never seen the show table. They meant that much to me genetically. They meant too much to me quality wise. And so they didn't make it to the show. I never go to the show that way. But a show career for my rabbits is 1 or 2 shows max, and that's it. Previously, when I was starting out, a rabbit, I would show it all year long. I'd show the heck out of it. And that's okay. You know what? You learn.
Well, and what do you learn out of that? What's the difference between showing it every single weekend versus just trying to go for one of those 2 shows, or showing it for
Well,
one big show?
I didn't realize how individuals that were breeding or at the level that they were going to national shows and conventions only, how they timed their breedings and how their breedings were geared for those 2 major shows. So they had basically 2 or 3 major breedings a season for those shows, and that's it. I mean, that's how it works. Now for the convention, I have 1 major breeding that'll be coming up. It's marked on the calendar to produce juniors from all my breeding does for that event. After that, the breedings that I have, those rabbits will all be geared towards the national show in the spring. So I have so many more rabbits that are culled through and evaluated that end up going to spring nationals than I do for the fall convention. I'll breed out of 30 does this spring for the fall convention. And if all goes well, and I average 6 babies a litter, that's 180 babies that I'll have to go through for juniors for the fall convention. And, you cull rabbits out and they don't all make it. You're tough on them. And again, you look on how they condition, how easy they condition, who they come out of, firmness of flesh, type, quality of coats, all those factors as you're going along. And I look at those rabbits at 3 months of age and 5 months of age and 5.5 months of age. Once they pass that 5 to 5.5 months of age, I know they're the real deal. But that's my line. And somebody else may have a different age or point of time of maturity that they actually make those final decisions than what I do.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, that completely makes sense. Let's transition to daylight if you're good with that. If you're good.
Yeah. Just a short thing on daylight is, realizing that the amount of light rabbits receive is important. In the spring, increasing day lengths, increasing daylight is all in our favor. those makes the springtime just an easy time to work with. But during those times of the year, like fall and winter, if you're trying to condition rabbits for shows and condition rabbits for the convention, the rabbits need about 12 to 14 hours of light a day. And so artificial lighting, you want to be able to provide a certain amount of lumens. I think it's like 800 lumens of light. Uh, your light bulbs need to go ahead and produce. And today they've got the technology in light bulbs is so much better than it was before, and the brightness of those lights is just really good and advantageous in a conditioning program. But you want 12 to 14 hours of light, and in the spring and through the summer, you don't have to worry about that. I mean, we get plenty of light, and the rabbits know, and they perform accordingly, and condition. Having the right amount of light is important to conditioning. Artificial light becomes more important in the fall than it does, and it is not as necessary in the spring.
Is that where you were saying like the biological need or the biological needs of the rabbit, like the estrogen and testosterone are increasing? Like, or why is the 12 to 14?
Yeah, that 12 to 14 hours of light is important because as we get to the spring, then estrogen and testosterone levels, the hormone levels in the rabbits are going up. If a doe's going to go ahead and bloom and really condition well and have a prime coat, her estrogen levels need to be at their peak. And so as we have to have the right amount of light to do that. And in the spring, it's all natural. It's just so easy to do. The rabbits know it's the right time of the year. Our day lengths, getting longer again and so forth. But as because the hormone levels are rising, that is a key piece that we need to have. In order to have that happen in the fall, we've got to artificially stimulate those rabbits with light and also with heat, 50 degrees minimum, to get those rabbits to respond and age. The younger rabbits will do that better, the junior age rabbits in the fall, versus your 2/6/8 and seniors who naturally want to go dormant and are saying, hey, Dave, this is not the right time of the year for me to go ahead and look my best. It's time for me to go ahead and sleep and go into that dormancy. And so their hormone levels are naturally lowering. And the only way that you can try to get that to raise up, and it's still not going to be the same as in the springtime, is provide artificial light, breed your does that are breeding age if you're going to a show and a fall convention 2 weeks before the event, so they get a spike in estrogen levels. And in your bucks, you keep the light on them, and hopefully to go ahead and keep their testosterone levels up so that they stay in condition, especially flesh condition, and again also fur. So those are critical variables that need to be addressed in the fall of the year versus the spring of the year.
So like how long, say in the fall, like how, like I'm assuming then you just have an automatic timer on in your barn to get the lights at that level, or?
Yeah, all my lights are on automatic timers in the barn and in each of the rooms. I've got outside runs, and those lights are on their own automatic timer. I just set it on the dial, and each of the rooms in the barn, and there's one, two, three different rooms. Each of them have their own automatic timer as far as lighting. So I don't have to worry about going in and flipping the light switch on and off and so forth. It's set for 14 hours of light, goes on at a certain time in the morning and goes off in a certain time in the evening. Yeah, I try to go ahead and take that variable out and maintain consistent light, that certain number of lumens that's getting to those rabbits. And so if we're getting shorter days, it fools them just a bit to think that they're getting enough light, and they stay in a condition that's going to allow them to prime.
Interesting. Uh, and I recognize the lumens, the brightness of light, but how the heck do you calculate that to be able to figure out for your own barn?
Well, you just go ahead and get bulbs that produce those kind of lumens, that brightness. That's all you need to do.
Okay.
Uh, uh, the bright lights that we have today and so forth, they're all giving adequate lumens. So it's kind of a no-brainer that way there.
I got you. Like, so yeah, so you're using like the shop lights or is it LEDs? What kind of lights
LED,
are they?
yeah, the LED lighting that we have today is exceptional. And so LED lights, and when you get some of the LED, they actually call them daylight bulbs, bright bulbs. That's what you want to have in your barn. And then you just turn those on, and they're going to produce enough bright light to affect the animals positively. And then
Very
all you
interesting.
deal with is keep them on long enough to get, to accomplish it.
Very, very, very interesting. Uh, um, so then in the springtime, I mean, how long do you keep the rabbits on that? Like the 14 hours. I mean, you're not just doing that a week before the national. You're doing it a month, too. How long?
No, I've actually got now the spring nationals for the Californians is April 20th. And I just 2 weeks ago set my lights to come on in uh, the various outdoor runs and in the rooms where I've got that potential show group. Those lights are coming on for 14 hours, so they'll stay that way, and we'll get even you know perhaps more light as it's going on. But I've got it going on now to go ahead and get things jump started and make sure that they're coming into prime coat and they've got enough time to do it. So it's basically a couple months ahead of time.
Gotcha. Yeah, and we're
Yeah.
recording this on February 20th, so he's going to be 10 weeks before the show. There we go. Good deal. Um, very, very interesting. All right. That's all or I don't have any other questions on the daylight. So let's transition to the temperature and humidity like you were talking.
Yeah, temperature and humidity. It's basically keeping your rabbits comfortable. The key range is 50 degrees to 80 degrees. That's the comfort range for most rabbits. You get below 50 degrees and it's getting really cool. Rabbits can handle cooler temperatures better than they can warmer temperatures. But when it comes to maintaining hormone levels in a rabbit in a physiological mode to be able to condition, you want it the minimum of 50 degrees, and you don't want it to get over 80 degrees if you can. So if you're in a barn, you got to have a fans, and if you're in a part of the country that is extremely hot and humid, you've got to have cooler units to go ahead and provide an environment that is sustainable for those rabbits and is going to be cool enough. So you got to be able to cool during those um, warm periods of the season of the year, and be able to warm things up during the cold part of the year. And that's in accordance with the kind of facility that you have.
So you're saying having an insulated, but still also having proper ventilation is key within
Yep.
that barn.
Yeah. You got to have ventilation, and we when we move into environment, we'll talk about that a little bit more.
Okay.
But yeah, you got to be able to ventilate, and you got to be able to cool the best you can. Sometimes it's so warm that all I'm doing is moving air. Now I don't have any fans running on my outside runs. They're all insulated, sides, back, and roof, and it stays really tolerable for those rabbits. But in the barns where it's just a little bit tougher to move air like you'd like to, and heat seems to stay in those kinds of environments a lot longer, and getting rid of it's more difficult. Then the fans are all on thermostatic controls. My fans go on at 70 degrees, and they don't turn off until it goes below 70 degrees, and they do that automatically. So again, over time, it's a system that you try to go ahead and minimize the changes in outside environment on your rabbits as much as possible. So rather than wait for it to get too warm and the fans kick on, I have them kick on at 70 degrees where it's still mild and comfortable. And by moving that air, and I've got trees around my rabbitry, around the entire rabbitry, which provides shade. It helps to bring that cool air in and move air and keeps them comfortable.
Very intriguing. Yeah. So you're taking the guesswork out of it, or even have to think about it by you having the system in the barn set up the way you do. You're helping control what nature's throwing at you as much as you can.
Yeah, that's exactly right. There are some variables that you can control in terms of comfort level. I can't control the weather. None of us can. The ups and downs, we can't do that. But I can minimize the stress of that particular variable on the rabbits by providing that air movement to keep them cool and comfortable. And I can go ahead and affect the variable of length of daylight and intensity of daylight by providing that LED light on a timer over the period of time that is necessary for the performance of those rabbits.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
I'm good on temperature. If you want to jump into number 6 on nutrition.
Yeah, nutrition. Here's the one that really gets a lot of people, because we start talking about feed, we start talking about supplements, and what's the secret feed to go ahead and bring those rabbits into prime and all that good stuff. An old saying: if you want them to show, grow them slow. I'm not impressed when I hear about a rabbit, and New Zealand's would be the ones that I'd refer to, that is 4 months old and 10 pounds. Okay, well, that's great. Your rabbit grows. But if you really want to develop an animal, and we're developing an animal to get on that show table, first off, it is a commercial breed and they need to grow. But because they grow that fast, that's okay, but it's not that necessary. As long as the rabbits at a mature age are to the mature weights that we have in our standard, then that's what we need to be addressing. And so if you want them to show them, really want them to bloom right, you want to grow them slow and go easy. When we talk about feed, you got to feed a quality feed. Still comes back to genetics. We got to have a great foundation to work with if we expect to get that kind of performance that we'd like to have in terms of top condition when it comes time to show them. We got to have the genetics. So you got to have a quality feed. You don't want to overfeed, and we won't get into too much detail with all of this, but you've got to go ahead and give the right amount of feed to the rabbit on a daily basis. And you've got to feed the same time every day. No variation to that. There's no forgiveness. You can't do it at 6 o'clock one morning and 9 o'clock the next morning because you slept in or for whatever reason. You've got to do it the same time. It's a regiment that you get on. And that consistency is important in order to go ahead and achieve your goal of having a top conditioned rabbit. So the quality of feed, the quantity of feed, and the feeding regimen, feeding multiple times during the day is important, especially during the summer months and on into fall. I mentioned briefly in our initial part of the interview about how during the digestive process that adds body heat to a rabbit. Well, you couple that with high outside temperatures in the summer, and you've got rabbits that are just not going to condition, or it'll be a very long time before you can get them to condition into a prime coat, especially if you're trying to achieve a show group for the fall convention. So feed them multiple times during the day. Feed them twice a day, 3 times a day. Small amounts of feed, multiple times, achieving the same goal. Those rabbits will grow and they will be comfortable during that feeding period over those months, and they will go ahead and condition a lot easier rather than dumping all their feed in at one feeding, their pellets, and then you might feed some supplements in the evening. That's an awful wide span of no eating in between. And so if you can do that multiple times with smaller amounts, you're going to achieve a lot more success in conditioning rabbits. Dairy cows are fed multiple times during the day. Heck, they could be fed 6, 8, 10 times a day, small amounts. Getting more feed, you can get more feed into those animals, but at a lower amount each time. And the rabbits just go ahead and perform. The animals perform so much better. So quality of feed, quantity of feed, and your actual feeding regimen, how often you feed, is important. When we get to supplements, this one here is like this opens the barn door because there are just so many supplements out there, and everyone has their little trick of the trade, so to speak, which supplements they think are the best. I feed steam rolled oats to my rabbits. They're getting that now. I start feeding steam rolled oats to the fall group, and then all the rabbits get it through winter and through spring until May 1st, and then I don't feed any supplements through the summer because it's just too hot. They don't need the calories. They don't need to go ahead and keep warm. Mother Nature will do that for them. In the wintertime, I feed the steam rolled oats, gives them a little more fat, a little more carbohydrates and calories into the diet to help keep them warmer through the cold temperatures, and also keep their flesh like they need to have. And then coming into spring, it just gets them ready and to prime again for that national show that I'm shooting for. So sunflower seeds and calf manna, and there's oxygen supplement and circulate, and the list goes on and on. People will have their own grain mixes that they go ahead and feed, and they'll use horse feeds as some of their supplements, or even goat feeds in their supplementation. So there's other feeds out there that are fed to other species of livestock. And the one in particular is that a lot of the horse feeds work really well if somebody wants to use them in a show conditioning diet, because a horse's digestive system is very similar to a rabbit. And so a lot of that translates over very easily. But, again, I've tried them all. I don't know that any one of them was any better than the other. And I keep it simple with steam rolled oats, and I do use the oxygen supplement accordingly when I want to and when I need to. I use it more on my breeding herd coming into the spring to get them ready for the breeding season than I do for the show herd. Other people may do that differently. So you've got to pick your poison. And my best advice is to keep it simple so that it doesn't get so overwhelming, both cost wise and then trying to get all the ingredients that you may be trying to put it together. A good quality feed and a basic supplement like steam rolled oats can work wonders in a show conditioning program.
Excellent. On the like when you're feeding something like steam-rolled oats or a different supplement, are you feeding that at a separate time than the feed, or do you see like rabbits digging that out when you feed it with pellets?
Yeah, and that's a good question. I always feed it at a different time so that they do not sort. I feed my rabbits in the morning their pellets. I did that because working with the university, my schedule with the university was such that feeding in the morning fit things a lot better than in the evening. So I feed pellets in the morning, and then I feed the steam rolled oats in the evening. And they are done with their pellets, and then they look forward to getting the oats, and they hit that. But it really does give them a good touch and it really enhances just their overall body look. And again, the bloom to their coat and so forth. The other piece that I forgot to mention is appetite. If rabbits do not eat, do not clean up their feed, if they have poor appetites, you cannot condition an animal that will not eat. And this goes to picky eaters. If you have to find some little treat that gets that animal to eat, um, this may seem harsh, but I'm sorry, that rabbit will not stay in my rabbitry. They've got to eat. If they are expected to perform and grow, they have to have an appetite. We always talked about during my career with the university in bull tests, and bulls in a bull test program is really a measure of appetite, the average daily gain. They can't have gains if they don't eat enough feed. And those that eat more feed will typically gain more. And it holds for the most part pretty true. So if your animal is not consuming its pellets as it should, then that rabbit should be culled. Coming back to genetics, if we're developing a genetic line, the last thing that we want to go ahead and cultivate in our breeding program are poor appetites. If our does that go into the breeding herd do not eat, how are they going to milk? How are they going to go ahead and raise a litter? How are they going to maintain flesh so that they'll rebreed back for the next litter? All goes back to appetite. Your show herd, if they're not going to eat, if they're going to be picky eaters, well, then you are not going to achieve having that rabbit that is going to be of the highest quality condition to compete at a top level. So appetite is extremely important.
Uh, Another question I think that we often see with breeders that aren't as experienced is, are you switching the brand of feed that you have constantly, or why would you not do that?
Yeah, I don't switch the brand of feed. I've fed Purina show formula rabbit pellets for a long time, and realize it or not, when you feed a feed for a period of time, your rabbits conform to that nutrition. You are developing a herd of animals that are performing according to the feed that you are providing. So you find a quality feed and you go with it. And there are other quality feeds out there. I always tell new breeders when they come in and they'll ask me, now, what should you feed? I ask them what's close to them. Find a quality feed that when you purchase it, it is always fresh, and it has not been sitting on a shelf for a month or longer. And stick with that, something that you can access very easily, that you're not having to drive hours to get a hold of, and feed it and develop your herd around it, and realize that your animals, you have now developed a herd that has conformed to the nutrition that you're providing them. No, I have fed the Purina pellets for a long time, and have gotten along really well. I don't, if something goes wrong, I look at the manager, and that's me. And I don't look at other pieces to put the blame on. So, and typically 99% of the time, it's something else other than the feed. But get a quality feed. And there's several of them out there, and go with that and stick with it and develop your animals on that, and you'll be successful. You just got to stay the course.
Yeah, and I totally agree. I think that you're indirectly picking them off that exact same the feed that you use, and so by changing it, you end up not realizing what you're doing as you change the different feeds. But I know that's the first thing that most people, less experienced people, do is, oh, it's not this feed, I got to switch to this one, and
Yep.
it's not necessarily the answer.
Yeah. Every one of us, including myself, have made the mistake. And so if I can prevent other individuals in this rabbit venture to not make that mistake, then that's good. That's a good thing.
Let's go into number 7 on health. How does health play an impact, or how is that a factor in getting rabbits prime?
Well, like anything, if an animal's not feeling good, they're not going to condition. So health-wise, they've got to be at their top form, so to speak. That goes from respiratory to digestive to parasites. So respiratory wise, you've got to have ventilation and make sure that your rabbits are healthy, that they've got good quality airflow. They are in a sanitary environment with regard to manure buildup and those kinds of things. But the respiratory aspect of the rat animal needs to be top notch. Digestively, we probably have the most difficulty in rabbits anymore with digestive upsets. And that comes back to, again, genetically. Hopefully, we're producing animals that are not predisposed to those kinds of things. But we want to keep those rabbits healthy. And so keeping enough roughage, fiber in their diet so that their digestive system is in top health form again, is really operating properly is important to have. Making sure that it comes back to our feeding, that we have a regimen. We feed the same time every day. We feed multiple times, smaller amounts of feed. Try not to go ahead and push feed during the hot times of the season in the summer. None of us like to eat a lot in the summer when it's hot. It just doesn't feel good. Animals are the same way. So you got to be mindful of that as you go ahead and look at that aspect of it. And then parasites, internal and external. Coccidiosis. What are you doing to go ahead and deal with coccidia in your herd if you have it? Deworming the rabbits, termites, external parasites, those kinds of things. I use Ivamec on my rabbits about 2 months before a major event, mainly for termites, because it seems like where we're at in this part of the world, we have issues with that. And so I give that Ivamec to them 0.2 to 0.3 of a cc orally. And then I don't have any problems that way there. I know that that's taken care of. Coccidiosis, I do a preventative treatment with tortrezuril, and I do that at weaning with the rabbits. And so those rabbits at weaning for me are 6 to 8 weeks of age. Just depends on the time of the year, and if it's in the winter months, I may wait till closer to 8 weeks of age to wean them, versus in the summer where 6 weeks of age, 7 weeks tops, get them away from the doe as quickly as possible in their own pens. But that's when I give that tortrezuril, and I give 1 cc orally to each of those rabbits at that time, and that's when I tattoo those rabbits. And then a couple days later, I wean them from the doe, and and have no issues with that coccidia. As that rabbit from weaning, so that's 6 to 8 weeks of age to 3 months of age, is the most critical period of time in the life of that rabbit. If you minimize stress during that time, that rabbit will go on and be a very productive animal, and again, a rabbit that you can condition properly for show. That's the critical time in the life of a rabbit. Beyond that, coccidiosis rarely is going to be an issue. Those rabbits are old enough at that time, their digestive systems are mature enough at that time that they can handle stress a lot better and move forward and not have any problems that way. I don't typically deworm rabbits. I hear about it being done all over. I'd like to know where they pick up the worms from. I mean, we've got animals that are on wire floors and cleaned multiple times, and So I'm always curious, okay, where are you picking it up? I guess that's a whole nother discussion, but my animal science background tells me that it's not an issue, and I certainly haven't seen it in my rabbits. And I've got a lot of years experience, working through that, I guess, to document it and to refute, some of the assumptions that are made that way. But coccidia treatment and external parasites with fur mites or something like that, I think are very valid and work. Of course, I have a mech. If you're giving it to the rabbits, then that's going to act as a internal parasite um, control as well. But those are, when we look at health, respiratory, digestive, and parasites are the things that need to be addressed. You got to have a healthy rabbit inside and out if you're going to condition it properly.
Well, and like you said before, right? There's the genetic potential of the rabbit, and you're trying to do everything you can to minimize those stresses so they can actually reach their potential. I mean, that's really what it comes down to is
Yeah,
anything you're doing that health wise or any of these factors, you're just burning off. The actual is no longer close to the potential of that rabbit.
that's right. That's right. You want to be able to, for that rabbit to express its potential. And so, again, you control those variables that you can control and make sure that you've got a healthy, well bred animal, a well taken care of animal that you're working with to condition.
Excellent. I don't have anything else on health, so let's go into number 8 on reproduction.
Yeah.
How does that factor into getting rabbits prime?
Well, when we're going ahead and showing rabbits in the spring of the year, when I'm showing my does, all my 6 to 8 does and senior does are bred when I take them to the national show because it primes them out. It gives them that ultimate level of hormones, estrogen and progesterone, in their system to just make them bloom. And 2 weeks prior to that event is when I breed those animals. Not any longer because they can start getting somewhat of a belly on them. And 2 weeks is all that's necessary. And the rabbits can still be handled without injuring, any of the kits internally and that kind of thing. And the rabbits really bloom and just they look 12 o'clock. They look their top. They'll hold their coach longer. In the fall, if you're showing a 6'8", true 6'8" in the senior, breeding those does for the fall convention is even more important than if they were showing in the spring. And the other side of the thing is you breed them and they calm down. They're not as grouchy as what we'll see some of those does if they're wanting to be bred in the spring, and if they're not bred, they can get pretty grouchy. So that helps calm their behavior just a bit. But in the fall for conditioning, true 6'8" and seniors, you can breed those, and that breeding will help to hold or lengthen the time that they will hold their coats if there's a chance for doing that. And so on the reproductive side, that's pretty much what I'd be looking at.
Gotcha. Yeah. No, and I think that having those time breedings is critical, right? I mean, you're trying to hit those. I think it's interesting how you've said that you're hitting a different window age group for what you're showing your rabbits for. And I know it's different on different breeds and such, but I mean, if you focus on New Zealand's, you have to be in those top notch, or you have to be in those respective age groups. And I can see the value of doing that for each show differently.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And so after that, we move into the environment, that's housing. And we talk a bit about that. Whether you have outside runs, you've got a barn that you're working with, or if you're in a controlled facility where you can control the temperature and the air temperature and also humidity and those kinds of things, it can get pretty intensive that way. But your environment, you want to be able to cool your environment if you're in a situation where it is going to get warmer. You're just trying to maintain a more consistent air atmosphere for those rabbits where you need to, and we do that differently depending upon the kind of facilities that we have. If you have stacked cages, in my opinion, with something like New Zealand's, I for one would never want to tackle that, because I think that becomes very really tough, especially from, we talked about respiratory issues with rabbits, and they've got pans underneath them. And I don't care how many times you clean those pans, they've still got urine going into those pans day in and day out, hour in and hour out, and their snoot is right by that pan. So, those rabbits, their air quality is not what it should be. It's really tough. Some of the smaller rabbits in a stack situation may work better, but I would not ever recommend it for New Zealand's or commercial breeds, because I just think they're too large and there's too much urine and manure production that goes on just every day, that makes it about impossible to keep that air quality where it ought to be.
Well, that ties into another question that I was going to have. And if you have cages that are dirty, how important is it to power wash them and get them clean so you have a chance of getting rats from them?
Yeah, I've never power washed a cage.
Really?
Yeah, I've never power washed a cage. My cages are inside. They're on hangers, hooked. I all have all single layers. Manure drops down to the floor. I burn the hair off of the cages, all the cages, at least 3 times a year. And I use a roof torch. Now that means I move rabbits out of those pens and I burn all the hair and clean them up. And they're spick and span when I get done. It basically disinfects them that way.
Interesting.
So yeah, but
So
I've never power washed a pen.
really, I'm not, no, I'm genuinely amazed by that. I mean, because I feel like that's one of those things that, but maybe by burning the hair off, that does enough. Because
Yeah,
I know it just seems like I don't know. I mean, you still get a buck that sprays or something like that. Interesting. I'm
yeah.
amazed.
Mention that, is curious to me. You know that I do not have a single New Zealand white buck that sprays. I keep all my bucks outside. They all have individual. There's a solid divider in all my pens, whether it's growing does or bucks. And my bucks are away from the does. They are outside in the outside runs, and I never ever have a buck with a urine stain. And I believe it's because they don't smell the does. The only time they smell a doe is when I put one in for them to breed, and they know what to do. Um, but I'm convinced that they are not in and around those does and cannot smell them in their location, and they don't do it.
Hmm.
They,
How
they
far
just
away are the bucks cages then?
Well, the buck cages, they're outside completely. I mean,
Wow.
uh, there's a solid barn divider between them and the does, and but uh, I never have an issue with stains.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I don't doubt that. I honestly thought that it's because your cages were just super clean, which they are because you're burning the hair off. But I'm
yeah. I burn the hair,
amazed.
run that torch, and then I brush all my cages, which cleans them thoroughly. I make sure I brush the bottoms of their cages if there's any manure, that tries to hang on any of the droppings that way. But yeah, I've had people come to my rabbitry, and I've got an east wing that's got 94 holes in it, and those holes are over 25 years old, and there's not a single bit of rust on any pen.
Hmm.
But yeah, I'm a stickler for cleaning, and people need to keep their pens clean. I've never had to, and now I don't power wash. I just don't do it.
Hey,
uh,
now if you don't have to, that's
yeah,
awesome.
I use the burner and brush the pens, and they look like brand new when I get done. And that's my regiment that I do at least 3 times a year.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
If
Clean pans, I clean my fans, make sure that the hair is off of them at least 3 times a year because hair will, naturally accumulate in the fans. So I make sure that they're clean so that the fans are operating properly and they're moving as much air as they need to, and so forth. And manure removal. I've got pits underneath my east wing. I keep those cleaned out. Um, Hydrated lime, corn cob bedding that goes in the base of them. But you gotta keep up on manure removal. No matter what time of the year, you got to do it.
So in you have or concrete walkways and then pits for the manure.
No, it's lime dust screenings
Okay.
as my walkways, and then I actually dug pits that they're only 12 inches deep, and so it's
And then
manual clean them.
right, right. If you can figure out that problem, I'd be interested in the solution of
Yeah,
of not having to manually clean them out.
yeah,
And then you said you have corn cobs
corn.
as the base.
Yeah, yeah. I just buy the corn cob bedding. It's ground corn cobs, and I put hydrated lime down once I clean the manure out, and then a layer of the corn cob bedding, and then go from there.
Like 3 inches, 6 inches. What is it?
Now it's only up probably 2 inches the most.
And then it just that's absorbing the
It
urine and
absorbs.
ammonia.
My pits are underlaid with gravel and tile, so the moisture goes down below and dries out. It doesn't stay wet, and that's lime screenings in the middle part of my barn and the dough room as well. And it all, yeah, and I my ventilation is just I got a lot of ventilation. I move a lot of air. If you come into my rabbitry, you will not smell ammonia. And you've got to take care of that. Ammonia is a whole nother issue. I did studies with the university in hog barns with ammonia levels at various levels in the barn with those pits that are underneath. There's ammonia you can smell, and there's also odorless ammonia, and both are detrimental. And people don't understand that. So, you've got to do everything to have really adequate airflow all times of the year. In the winter, you got to make sure there aren't any drafts, but you still have airflow. I put a shade cloth down at the lower opening into my barn that still lets air in, but it breaks the gusts or snow during the winter months. My windows are closed. My exhaust fans are running 24/7. I've got ventilation ports at the base uh, of my rooms just to go ahead and make sure there's air, but there's always plenty of air. The east wing is open to the east every day and night, 24/7, all year long. Winter or summer, doesn't matter. But the end windows are shut, so there's no draft.
There's no wind coming in from the east. Is that why?
Well, yeah, yeah. And most of the time, when you do get a nor'easter, that's an oddity. Most of the wind's coming from the west. So the rabbits get the benefit of really good ventilation. There's always good air movement in there and so forth, but it's not creating a draft and blowing on them in a manner that's going to be detrimental.
Hmm.
All good conditioning, keeping them comfortable.
Hmm. Trying to think if there was another question on environment. I can't think of any at the moment. Very, very interesting though. No, I do have one. Because you had hit on it with so under your pits you have the corncob bedding, then you have limestone, and then they're 12 inches down, the corncob bedding, the limestone, and then tiles underneath of it that's draining out so that it stays dry. Do you think that's like one of those most important factors is keeping the urine and keeping the liquid part out? I mean, that's
Yeah,
what he's referring.
right. Some way that the air moves up through that tile, which helps to go ahead and keeps things drier. I don't ever have um, pools of urine laying in those pits. It's just not there, you know. And then I clean those pits out when they get full. When they get to that 12 inches, when they get full, I clean them out. You know, whatever it takes, shovel them out, put new hydrated lime down, put another layer of corn cob bedding, and it's just that thin layer, 2 inches the most. It may be only an inch. It's not a lot. Helps absorb things, but um, and that manure drops down, and it's far enough away from those rabbits that there's continual air movement that ammonia is never an issue. It's just not in, you know, not in their breath zone.
One more question on environment. What type of watering system do you use, and how important is water in having rabbit?
Yeah, it's the most important nutrient. Good quality water, fresh water daily. Summer months, you may have to water 2 or 3 times a day because the water gets warm just naturally. In the winter months, I do not have an automatic water system. Yep, this is the dinosaur in the rabbit industry right here. I water by hand. You know, the barn wasn't set up originally for rabbits. It was set up for show lambs that my kids were involved with, and they showed rabbits a little bit, but they showed lambs and hogs. And so then I took over the barn and made it into a rabbitry and just made sure that I was really conscious of ventilation. That was the number one thing that I looked out for with it. But watering, an automatic water system would make it easier on me, but I am not set up in the right facility, in my opinion, to have one because I do know that those systems, you know, water drips and rabbits play with those nipples. And so water's going to go down on the ground and it's going to add more moisture to that inside environment that I do not want to happen, especially in the winter months where it's the dampness and humidity and you close things up some more because of the winter. That could really create some issues, I believe, in my rabbitry that I just don't want.
Mhm.
So I water by hand, and I don't like it, but that's what I do.
And you're using Crocs then?
Yeah, I'm using Crocs. I
That's what
use
we do.
the twist on Crocs.
Oh, okay,
You
yeah, yeah. I use
know,
ceramic ones, but yeah,
yeah, I
yeah.
also have holders from Klubertons that those Crocs just set right into nicely. And I've done that, and they go in and out easily. And so, yeah, I've just watered by hand for years. Uh, I it forces me to go ahead. I know when a rabbit's off, when they're not doing what they normally do, when they don't go to feed, when something's bothering it. I know it because I it makes me pay more attention because I'm there at every pen every single day, you know, morning and night, and more often at times when I need to, you know, to get things done. So I water and I notice uh, which rabbits drink more water than others, and that's always interesting. When it comes to the winter months, yeah, I deal with ice. My bulls will last about 3 days, and then I got to go ahead and thaw them out. So I have a double and sometimes a triple set of bulls that I can trade in and out, and I keep defrosting and doing that. I know that the rabbits will chew ice when they need to, and I can tell when they're not getting enough feed, or if they're not eating enough feed, I know that they're not getting enough water. And in the wintertime is where I've got to watch that. But I've got it down to where the rabbits learn when I pour some water into their bowl that they know when to get to it and drink. And they eat and maintain condition, and I monitor condition on the rabbits to tell me when they're getting enough water and when they're not.
Very good. I use Crocs too, so you're in safe company. I always and similarly, right? That you end up you see when they go off feed and they go off water, and you know that something's going on with them. So
Yep.
I can totally relate. All right, let's go to the 10th factor, management.
Okay. The management, one of the things that I put in there, the most critical things is we talked about a regiment, developing a regiment with your program, and that goes to feeding and how you care for your rabbits. That's extremely important, but it's basically maintaining a consistent approach throughout the season, where you're doing the same thing every day at the same time and keeping those rabbits on some sort of a regimen so that it with that consistency, it reduces stress and change that may be going on. But management is basically how do you pull all these pieces together in a format that is going to go ahead and allow you to do your best job of conditioning a rabbit for show. So how do we pull our genetics together in terms of a breeding program? How do we deal with the change of the seasons? What age rabbits are the most appropriate for the show that we are targeting to do our best at? What is the daylight situation in the given time of the year? The length of day, the amount of intensity of light, the number of hours of light that we're getting. What is the temperature and humidity that we're dealing with, and how does that affect the amount of feed that we're feeding, especially in the summertime? Feed less feed in the summer, more feed in the winter months. Why? Because they need more calories to stay warm in the winter. They need less calories to go ahead and maintain a comfortable body heat in the summer. When we look at nutrition, make sure we have a quality feed. We're feeding enough feed. We're not overfeeding. Make sure that we go ahead and feed multiple times during the day, or we feed lesser amounts using that strategy to enhance the appetite of the animals that we're working with. Health, we got to have healthy animals if we're going to condition them properly. If we don't have that, we're not going to get the job done. We can't fix that if we don't go ahead and make sure that that's in place from the beginning. And then in the environment, or I should say the reproduction, we talked about breeding the animals, especially the does, 6-8 does and senior does in the spring, and the same in the fall. That strategy will help them to maintain and hold a coat longer and really bloom beautifully for the show table. Do we have the right housing? Is our environment such that it is going to go ahead and help with all the work that we're doing during the year? Do we have the right facilities to go ahead and enhance the kind of animal that we're trying to put on the show table? So management pulls all those pieces together in all those particular areas. And it's like anything else. If you play baseball or football, there are those individual athletes who just have a sixth sense or a special gift to play those sports. They know when to do certain things. They just know it. It's just in their gut, and they get it done. Conditioning a rabbit for show or this particular hobby or industry that we're in, do you have that sixth sense? Not everyone does. I know when to go ahead and change a certain approach to feeding a rabbit for show to make sure they bloom at the right time. I just know by looking at it. It's not something that you can teach. It's not something that you can put down in a written form and a recipe and give to someone and say, hey, if you follow this, everything's going to work out great. Doesn't happen that way. So if you have that gift, you're going to be a little bit ahead of the curve when it comes to success in conditioning a rabbit for show. If you don't, doesn't mean you can't do it, but it may take a little bit longer to go ahead and understand when you should do certain things and how you should do certain things to achieve that level of competitiveness for the rabbits that you're raising.
Awesome. And I mean, that hits all the topics, back right on the head of it. It's all within your control, and you just have to find the ways to manage those things that seem uncontrollable to try to give yourself the best chance of success and get the most out of the potential of those animals. So
that's
really
right. Take baby steps. Beginners are not going to learn all this overnight. Like I said, I'm still learning, and I'm 69 years old and learn every day new things about the rabbits and conditioning and growing them and raising them and so forth. So be patient, take your time, earn your stripes. And if you do those kinds of things, you'll have a lot of successes along the way.
Awesome. Awesome. I think that's a great place to wrap up on the call. And then I'll hit stop recording here for a second. But this is really neat. I love how you laid it out with the 10 factors, and it seems logical, right? I really appreciate that, and it's the reality of why your animals are in top-notch show condition, and why you can put so many great ones on the table at a time. Is you are methodical and have thought about how to approach specific shows, and it shows in your herds and the animals that you put on the table. So I definitely appreciate your time doing this, Dave, and it's an honor to get to learn from you and share that knowledge with everybody else.
Hey, thanks very much. I enjoy it.
Thanks, Dave.
Okay.